What's up, players? Welcome to Sims Tennis. We've got another racket review for you guys. Today we will be reviewing the new 2024 Headspeed Pro. I got 3 of these rackets in order to see what the range of specs are so that we can get a peek into the quality control. I'll put those measurements up on screen before we get into the playtest, but first let's talk about the updates to the Speed line of rackets. Just as Head has done with many of its recent releases, there are just some very subtle changes here from the prior generation. In terms of the paint job, we have about exactly what you would come to expect from the Speed line. I personally think it's very mundane or even a bit boring, but it's not a bad paint job. They have changed the paint, however, from a gloss to a more matte or velvety soft touch paint. I thought that new paint looked and feels good, although it does seem to get a bit more dusty looking than gloss paint jobs do. I've also heard that people with one-handed backhands don't feel as if this type of paint slides as easily out of their offhand when hitting backhands, so that may be something that you want to consider as well. In terms of changes to the racket itself, they've added more auxetic to the layup of the racket. Now instead of just getting it in the yoke, it has been added to the handle as well. The specs of the racket remain largely unchanged. It still has an 18x20 string pattern and an unstrung weight of 310 grams. It still has a constant 23mm beam, but one small change that they did make is that they moved the balance of the racket down from 315mm to 310mm. It seems, however, that even though the balance has changed, the swing weight remains mostly unchanged. Having said that, here are the specs of the rackets I got, and I must say that the spec tolerance from these 3 rackets is as good as you will see from manufacturers these days. As thrilled as I was about this, I did, however, discover a big quality control issue. I'll do my best to show it to you guys, but as I was looking at the grommets on the outside of the frame, I noticed that the plastic piece fit tight up against the right side, but that there was a small gap on the left side. I initially assumed that it was just a warped grommet, but upon looking at the inside of the frame, what I actually found was that the holes that were drilled for the grommets were not centered. If you look here at the flat portion of the frame that these holes are drilled into, you can see that they're pretty significantly closer to the left side of the frame than they are to the right. There were about 5 to 6 grommet holes that were out of alignment, and the rest of the frame looked good, but I did have the same issue on 2 of the 3 rackets that I received. Alright, so now let's get into the playtest. Believe it or not, I've never hit with the Speed Pro before, and I must say that I was really surprised by this racket. I don't think that it necessarily fits my game well, but it was such a good all-around frame that I did consider a switch. So let's get into some of the specifics. On ground strokes, I really enjoyed the feel that this racket gave me. It felt soft, yet really responsive. Forehands with this racket were really good. The launch angle and power level are both pretty low, so you need to be able to provide your own pace. But if you're capable of doing so, then you can get some good mass-based power out of this racket. The longer I played with this frame, the more I was able to enjoy the combination of power and precision that it offered. And while the control that the 1820 string pattern gave me was great, what I was really surprised with was the amount of spin that I could get out of it. On backhands, this racket was amazing. The combination of mass, head size, and string pattern allowed me to obliterate the ball while still finding control. Quite simply, I think this racket is my favorite to hit backhands with. Moving on to volleys, the racket was good, and nothing really stood out to me in a good way or a bad way. It did have nice stability with a nice direct feel, so I would say that it's a very serviceable racket at net. Serves with this racket were the most surprising shot for me. I don't know why I didn't expect much, but the racket performed great. There was plenty of both mass and pop to get the ball moving fast, and there was nice control as well. It kind of just offered the perfect blend of those 2 things. I also was surprised with the way I could use spins with the frame, as the 1820 still allowed me to get the ball kicking up or sliding away from my opponent on demand. Alright, so who's this racket for? Overall, this is a good all-around racket for advanced all-court players who like to hit a little bit more flat and through the court. The blend of control and power seemed to strike just the right balance with this frame, and the spin that I could generate was a pleasant surprise. The 100 square inch head size, the beam shape, and design features also make it feel like one of the more forgiving offerings that is available, so all around this is one of the best playtests I can remember. Alright, so that's all for the review. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. Also, please consider subscribing, and don't forget to embrace the grind.